In the bedroom.
In the bedroom. Like, yeah, we had our clothes on, right? that's where the memory was made, though. As we go.
So did we go through a tribulation?
Was it? Maybe it was 3.5 years. It was the Great Tribulation.
I just thought about that. Other than you, I didn't have anybody to talk to. And I really didn't want to talk to you. I felt betrayed. I was angry.
All right, guys. Shalom, shalom, and Kelly is back with us. And so tonight, one of the things we want to do is we want to talk through some of the details, I think, of our story. Some of these might get a little interesting. So talk through some of the details, and some of this might be a little bit interesting. I know that we'll see where it goes. I do know this. At least a portion of this is probably going to wind up on the Patreon side, simply because, it may be a little more raw than we necessarily want to put in on the public YouTube side. So what we were going to do is give a little bit more background on our journey, how we came to, or how the Father really kind of led us into understanding more about marriage, understanding more about headship, patriarchy, some of these different pieces. And I don't know that we've ever really fully shared our story in the public square. I remember distinctly that we have told our story a couple times at Biblical Families retreats. And if you haven't seen the Biblical Families Forum, that's a great opportunity just to fellowship and meet with and find other people who are of like mind, at least in the marriage side. A lot of different belief systems in terms of the Messiah and how Torah works in or doesn't. In our circumstance, we're very much Torah keepers. But really the background, I think a lot of people come to an understanding of polygyny, come to an understanding of biblical marriage from different but maybe painful circumstances. And so we've heard stories, we've heard lots of stories, we've met lots of people who have gone through challenging situations, and that was really ultimately in a difficult situation and asking the Father, how do we get here? What's the purpose? What are you trying to teach us? Searching the Word, and then it's like, oh, wow, the Word doesn't say what I thought it said. So in our circumstance, if I were to be really honest with you and go way back, I would say that I had trouble all the way back in high school and college. Did not ever have any real serious solid girlfriends because I never could make up my mind. I just always thought that ladies are incredible and pretty and fun to be around. And I've always just sort of had this mindset of wanting to take care of and being responsible for ladies. We met, military, got married, and we've already shared sort of our story of journey into Torah and how those things came about. During that time frame, I would have to say, over the course of the years, there were multiple different times where there were ladies that would get my attention, or I would find interesting. I'll put it that way. And always I would go, oh my gosh, no, this is terrible, because I'm married and I'm a one-woman man, because that's what the church says, and I'm a preacher. And so what my response would be to run away, somehow cut ties, somehow close the door, somehow nail it shut, somehow whatever, so that was, and it would go away. But I always walked around, often had this guilty place in my heart going, why in the world do I love Kelly, want nothing more than to take care of and walk through life with her, and yet why am I finding my attention drawn in other places at the same time? And I never understood that. So fast forward to about, this is 10 years ago, not quite 10 years ago, probably 8 years ago now, when I took a job. And at that job, almost immediately, there was a single lady that was divorced that was working there. And I essentially was almost an assistant. I became a trainer alongside of her, and we worked very closely together. And in the process of that, what I found is that my heart was being pulled in that direction. Just had great communication. We had good rapport. Just somebody that I enjoyed being around or being working with. And she had a bunch of difficult circumstances, and the bottom line is I found that my heart was really drawn toward her, and I struggled with that. I really did. I struggled with that very hard, trying to figure out what in the world. Why am I headed down this road again? Now, I want you to understand that at no point in our marriage have I ever had a sexual relationship with anyone else. Still to this day, since well before we were married, or before we became one. And I started again going to the Father saying, why am I like this? What is the problem here? And I knew that I had committed spiritual adultery. We've probably heard this in the church before, spiritual adultery, right? It's adultery in your heart. And so I had to start doing some research. I had to go to the Word, point at which I began to understand that that adultery can only happen with a married woman. And the lady that I was working with wasn't married. But I also understood that if I had relations with her, we would be married. But during this time frame, I'm learning these things. I'm writing about them on my blog, but we're not talking about them at home, right? In hindsight, this is really kind of a difficult, it's a difficult situation because honestly, I didn't know how to broach this. I wasn't being the man that I needed to be and just say, honey, we need to sit down and have a Bible study. So this actually went on for 3 years, about 3 years. But about the same time, also, things became very apparent to Kelly that there was definitely something going on in the background. And I forget what actually precipitated the conversation.
In the bedroom.
In the bedroom. Like, yeah, we had our clothes on, right? That's where the memory was made, though, when we had this really hard conversation. She basically says, have you told her that you love her? And I said, yes, I have. And
I grabbed my necklace that had my wedding ring on it. I broke my necklace, yep. And I threw it at you, right. And I said, I want a divorce.
And I said,
no.
Said, no, that's not going to happen. Maybe it was 3.5 years. It was the Great Tribulation.
I just thought about that.
It's a purifying crucible.
I don't know. I just thought about that when you said that went through, we went through another 3 years of
a speaker, Moshe Konachowski, speaking in Georgia. And he is the leader of a ministry, Your Arms to Israel, Yati. I would say that we agree on a lot of things. Maybe there's some things that we disagree on. I don't know. But the bottom line is that when I first started as leading a little congregation, I had somebody come up to me and say something about him and said that he was okay with polygyny. They may have said polygamy, but that he was okay with polygyny and wanted to know my opinion. And at the time, all of my understanding, because this is years before we get to the point with this woman, years before, I said, no, can't do that with Scripture. That's a no-go. And so I took a public stand basically saying that was a no-go. I didn't necessarily say anything disparaging about him or anyone that taught that, But I did make a public statement in our fellowship that I did not think that was biblical. I had not studied it. I didn't study it. So fast forward back to this point where, we're 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in at this point with Kelly finding out that I'd been studying this for several years, and that in fact there was an emotional relationship, if nothing else, with this woman at work. And we're wrestling through the very early stages of her going, I want a divorce, and me saying no. So I'm laying there in bed on that Shabbat morning, and I saw an email that he was going to be speaking in Georgia. The Ruach, the Holy Spirit told me, says, you're going to go apologize to Moshe. And at the time, I just thought, we'd drive down for the day and I'd pull him off to the side and just, hey, Moshe, so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I'm good. I thought I could make it a very private matter. You're going to laugh here in a minute when I tell you the rest of this piece of the story. We got listed on the attendees for the Biblical Families Retreat. Now, Biblical Families Retreat's just a quick advertisement for BibFam, because we have lots of dear friends now through BibFam and in Biblical Families. The BibFam Retreats, typically it's weekends where families who understand biblical marriage can get together, can fellowship, can have a good time. The ladies can get together and have a powwow, and for those who need emotional support, they can get the emotional support. Guys can have conversation. There's times of worship together nearly every day. Typically, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday event, and all of it great, family-friendly, fun, just a lot of great times. And for many people that have been kicked out of the church over polygyny, this is one of the few times during the year that they can really, truly let their hair down and fellowship with brothers and sisters in Messiah, even if we don't always agree on some of the other points with regards to the Torah. What we do agree on, we focus on those things, and biblical marriage being a major, Yeshua the Messiah being a major. So we go to this event. Usually on Friday evenings, there'll be a big round circle and everybody's sitting there. And in that circle, everybody will introduce themselves and tell their story or give the abbreviated story. So Kelly's a whopping 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks into this understanding. And
it wasn't a month.
It was barely that.
Yeah.
And now she's sitting in a circle with some people who now are very dear friends, but she's looking around the circle and there's a man and his 2 wives. There's a man and his 3 wives. There's a man and his 2 wives. There's, and then a whole lot of other families like ourselves that, it was one woman, and maybe the wife had seen it first, maybe the husband had seen it first. The stories were all different, all interesting, but the father clearly doing something common among all that were there. Gets around to him. We're about 40 minutes into this, and he comes walking in the door with both of his ladies. And while we're sitting there in the circle, the Holy Spirit tells me, he says, you're going to stand up and apologize to him right here. You let a public statement stand that was negative toward him. You're going to apologize publicly. And that's what I did. And I explained to him in front of everyone why I was apologizing, because I had allowed something to stand that was negative towards him with regards to his understanding of polygyny. And my ignorance, I did not understand at that time, but I needed to apologize to him for allowing that to stand. Over the course of the weekend, it was emotionally very challenging for Kelly. This mindset of one man, one woman, and then sort of having all of that shattered, and in a very real way, sitting right there talking with. Talk about that for a minute, and some of what you went through those first 2 or 3 weeks, because I know that was really challenging for you.
It was, because I didn't, other than you, I didn't have anybody to talk to, and I really didn't want to talk to you. But it was hard. It was difficult. It really was, because I felt betrayed. I was angry. I felt like I had been lied to.
Mm.
And
And certainly I had acted at the very least deceptively by not sharing some of the things that I was learning after I was confident that they were true. I think it would have been much wiser for me not to withhold it for 3 years.
But I do remember a couple of times even telling you that, you're a pastor and you were preaching all this stuff. You're lying to me. You're lying to everybody else. We were all being lied to. And that weekend was very, very difficult for me. But when I came inside, you gave me a hug, and then everybody else rallied around me and gave me a hug and prayed over me. And how far I've come since that retreat. And, just some of the things that happened there, and we can all laugh about it now.
So then over the next 3 years, sort of had to end the friendship with this particular lady, because it was clear that wasn't going to work. And it since then, though, as we've continued to grow, this has been one of those things where we can really kind of share some of the stuff that we've learned. We can share the struggle, we can share the difficulty going through it. Because we know families that have come into this lots of different ways. So we've seen it all. We really have. We've seen a whole bunch of different things. This is something that is God ordained, that can be, when handled rightly, I think. And if the Father's in the middle of it, when it's handled in righteousness, and all parties walk in righteousness, it's something that can be very beautiful. When a plural family is operating righteously and everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, the wives are getting along, loving each other, caring for each other, but both looking to and following after the husband, and the husband's taking care of and protecting and providing and everything else. The image that it portrays is it portrays God and his two brides, and it portrays it very well. It's a beautiful thing when it's done righteously.
What I wish I had learned in my 20s and 30s, but didn't learn until my 50s, was submission. And if it's done right between both parties, it is a very beautiful thing.
Agreed. The question is, it's always been there. Did we just not see it? Were we not paying attention? Were we not open to it? Or, obviously, does he save us for later on?
Yeah, I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Right. Agreed. I did too.
And
just with regards to the headship side, I can tell you that my relationship with my sons is better now than it was 3 or 4 years ago, before I started really trying to grab a hold of that too. I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I apologize that I wasn't being the leader of the home and really instructing you boys the way I should have. And he said, it's okay. He said, you're doing it now and you're doing an amazing job of it. And I was really warmed by that, based on the fact that he recognizes and sees what I'm trying to do, and he's buying into it, and he's walking with it and growing, and that's exciting. But they're excited about coming on and speaking with us. We've gotten to know them over the last 7 or 8 months, something like that. It was August, was the summer retreat. That's where we met. Had a great time hanging out, got to know them, got to meet them, spend time fellowshipping with them. It's just a great time. I look forward to the retreats now. They're fun. It's gotten to where it's going to be with family. It's going to be with friends and others who understand and walk the walk, and and a lot of times new people that are learning and coming along and growing, and that makes they're the ones that are going through the challenges that we did the first time, and we're the ones that can say, hey, come on, it's okay. Let's talk about this. Let's see if we can help you figure out how to walk this thing right and righteously, and that's what we want to do. Is help people. So, all right, guys, we'll wrap it up right there. I think a little bit of this will wind up probably, but the whole thing, the majority of this thing will be on the Patreon channel. But good stuff. Maybe there'll be more that we can talk about in the future, but I know that there are other subjects that we'll talk about. Get Kelly on here and we can have a conversation. We do need to have a really good conversation about submission at some point. Talk about that in detail and maybe some of the ways that we handle that. That's probably a good topic for next time. We'll do that in a couple weeks. You know, this is what my word says. This is how you walk righteously before me. And these are what the options are. And these are where the guardrails are. Don't cross the guardrails. Stay on the road doing this and you'll be okay. And some of those things in the road are allowed that Christendom has said no, right? And so we want to be here to be able to help teach and help walk with you and explain that. So, all right, for King and Kingdom, we bid you shalom.